The governor of New Mexico, says Benny Johnson. Benny Johnson's great. I mean, you can't help but laugh at Benny Johnson on YouTube because he's like, look what this is. This is ridiculous. I really like Benny Johnson. I don't know why. But I like him. Governor of New Mexico has just declared the First and Second Amendment does not exist due to an emergency. Under this legal theory, all of our rights are essentially eliminated. And we're going to hear from her. And the crazy thing about this is exactly what happened in Canada. Let's listen to her. Maybe she makes sense, Eric.
But your point is valid.
You took an oath to the
I love this story.
Isn't it unconstitutional to say you cannot exercise your carry license?
With one exception, and that is if there's an emergency, and I've declared an emergency for a temporary amount of time.
Pause it right there.
I can.
The faces of the guys.
Well, dude, she lets the cat out of the bag in 2 seconds there. First of all, there's no such thing as, yes, with one exception, if there's an emergency. What? No, it doesn't.
No,
that
doesn't work like that in America.
That literally is not the case. Was there a footnote at the bottom of the
Yeah.
Of the well, no, it wasn't. That's the first thing. But she believes that you're stupid enough to believe that. Yes, you're right. With one exception, an emergency. And then what's the next sentence? And I said there's an emergency. What? And it gets worse from there. But this is where we're at. Like, who is giving her these talking points? Who is the man behind the curtain saying, they'll buy it? Go.
Well, these guys next to her are, I'm guessing, one's her police chief of something or head of security or something. I can't read that. And then this guy just looks so perplexed. And they're both just like, what are you saying, lady?
Additional powers. No constitutional right, in my view, including my oath, is intended to be absolute.
That's just the most insane thing. That's exactly what the Constitution is. And you said no footnote at the bottom of the Constitution. That's what it is in Canada. That's why and Australia, that's why they were allowed to lock people down in Canada. That's why they were allowed to put people in hotel rooms in Canada, camps in Australia, because in the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, it says all these things are subject to an emergency, which means you can do that as long as we've declared an emergency.
Yeah.
And if I got into power, a real man of the Conservative Party in Canada would get into power, he'd say, we're amending the gosh darn Constitution to take that line out. They'll never do that because they're cowards. But that's exactly why that's allowed. And that's why I always say we don't have a real constitution. We have all these rights that can be taken away at any time, and they work. This woman seems to think that's how it works in America for some reason, who has a real constitution, except for when we declare an emergency, we can suspend the Constitution. And what was the last line she just said?
I actually want to start it from the beginning. I'm sorry. Let's let it play without.
You want to let it play? Yeah, it's only a minute 45.
Okay.
Yeah. But your point is valid.
You took an oath to the Constitution. Isn't it unconstitutional to say you cannot exercise your carry license?
With one exception, and that is if there's an emergency, and I've declared an emergency for a temporary amount of time, I can invoke additional powers. No constitutional right, in my view, including my oath, is intended to be absolute.
That's the line.
There are restrictions on free speech. There are restrictions on my freedoms. In this emergency,
this guy on the left,
this 11-year-old, and all these parents who have lost all these children, they deserve my attention to have the debate about whether or not in an emergency we can create a safer environment. Because what about their constitutional rights? I took an oath to uphold those too. And if we ignore this growing problem without being bold, I've said to every other New Mexican, your rights are subrogated to theirs. And they are not, in my view.
Wait a minute. You're talking about crimes. There are already laws against the crimes, so how are their rights?
I got it. But again, if I'm unsafe, who's standing up for that?
Guy wiping his face now.
If this climate is so out of control, somebody should do something. I'm doing as much as I know to do.
Madam Governor, do you really think that criminals are going to hear this message and not carry a gun in Albuquerque on the streets for 30 days?
No. But here's what I do think. It's a pretty resounding message
No, it's not. So this is the exact logic they used in Canada for lockdowns, vaccines, and everything. You don't have the right to make me sick. Your rights don't supersede mine. There's no rights superseding anything. It's just rights. And she thinks that you can just take them away. One, because she thinks it'll matter if you tell people that they can't carry guns for 30 days. Like, just like the reporter said, criminals aren't going to do that. But the fact that her excuse is because you might harm me, therefore your rights are suspended. It makes no logical sense. Legally in the United States, it makes no legal sense. And this is the ramblings of a woman who just wants to be able to say that she is God, essentially. When I say so, I have all the powers. And if you're bad, then I can take away your rights to punish a few people. I will punish the greater population to send a message to those criminals, and they're going to hear it.
Yeah.
I don't need no man.
Well, you're right. So, first of all, I mean, the entire argument hinges on something that's completely untrue. We've gotten through that, right? There is no, yes, except for in an emergency, verifiably untrue. Secondly, and secondly, the very next sentence is, and I've created an emergency. It's like, wait, so that's like Fauci saying, I am science. It's like, why didn't you just say, I make the rules now? It's the exact same thing. And then she says that we should be able to have this debate or something in there. She starts talking about, really, lady, you don't want to have we both know you don't want to have a debate. You want to declare emergencies left and right and tell people exactly what to do. And if you think that it's an emergency, whatever happened in the state of New Mexico, and now you're declaring a state of emergency where people can't carry their guns for 30 days. Like,
and then everybody's just going to start robbing people because they won't have their guns.
No. Why not? Instead of telling people not to carry their guns, just say, hey, state of emergency, no crime for 30 days.
That's right.
Why
what
would
the first reporter said?
Yeah, why would this one work? Why not? Why can't you just go to San Francisco and say, hey, it is a state of emergency. Cars are being broken into. You can't park your car for 5 minutes to go get some snacks out of the gas station. It is an emergency. No more car break-ins.
Hate speech is a permanent declared emergency against being mean. If you think about it, if a governor was to say, we're declaring a language emergency from now on for the duration of this emergency, which could last 3 years, as we saw with COVID, for 3 years.
Well, it's coming back now.
So being mean is against the law. So hate speech emergency, you guys. We have to point out these stupid scenarios and apply the logic evenly so that, maybe you're just sitting there and you're being like, why can't we do that? And I feel like we have a duty, a call of duty to apply it. And everybody does, and good on those reporters, whomever they were, to try to apply this logic that this person's presenting, because she said we should have a debate over whether or not we can suspend rights. And that's just not what America is founded on. And that's not
she doesn't want to have a debate. Obviously, she doesn't want to have a debate. She wants to make the rules as she goes along. But more importantly, maybe not more importantly, but secondly, who are the gun-toting New Mexican patriots that are going to say, you know what, she's right. I'm gonna do exactly. There's that market. I don't believe exists. There's criminals who are going to have guns anyways. There's patriots who are going to have guns anyways and use them properly. And then there's going to be a bunch of libtards who don't have a gun anyways. There's not going to be a strapping 6'5" man with 5 kids who's taking care of the household and carries his gun in his truck and one on his hip, and he's gonna say, you know what, she's right. I better listen to this weird little lady and put my guns in the safe for the next 30 days to save a life. That market isn't even there. Who is that for?
Somehow it's never their fault. Just like in Chicago, we have great gun control. It's the people bringing in guns from out of state. That's the problem. It's not New Mexico's fault. It's somebody else. They won't say it's Mexico's fault, even though that's probably where a lot of the illegal firearms come from.
We have to sue Kia and sue Hyundai.
Yes. I liked, what was this comment on one of our videos? There's nothing wrong with San Francisco. It's propaganda. As long as you learn not to leave your valuables in your car, you'll be fine. It's just like, I don't want to, like, that's not reality. You love your, what is it? You become okay with your slavery or something, my friend called that, where it's like, where I live, Eric, where you've been, um, maybe I shouldn't say what I do. Come on, criminals. I won't say what I do, which I'm comfortable with my safety. And it's not leave my door unlocked. I'm not that stupid. But you know, let's just say you don't have to worry about your car being broken into. No one knows what my car is, so I guess it's fine. But like, you don't, like, that's not a world you should just
Well,
accept, where it's like smash. It was the Seth Rogen thing where, like, if you haven't had your car smash and grabbed, then I guess you just don't know what it's like to live in a big city. It's like, I've lived in big cities, and Toronto sucks a lot now, but you don't just expect your car to be broken into a few years ago. It's
well, the
these policies that you guys allow that turn your city into this, and you don't realize it.
Well, the car break-ins are a very specific San Francisco problem. Like something's happening there. I don't know whether it's gangs or what it is. That's a very like yeah, it happens in Oakland, it happens in Berkeley, it happens in other Bay Area cities, but it is a very I mean the same thing with the poop, right? Like yes, there's
Yeah, San
poop in
Francisco's
Oakland,
great.
but it's just it's very specific to San Francisco for some reason. And it's one thing for me, like I'll admit, growing up, I thought it was all normal because I was a kid. So when you don't
Mhm.
know anything else, like if I take the BART or the metro, whatever you want to call it, from Oakland to San Francisco and get out, and the train station is in the mall. So I go there and just shop. There was a point in time in my life when I was really young where I didn't even realize that people lived in San Francisco. It was just a shopping mall to me, right? I didn't know what was going on. Of course, the anchor retailer from that mall has left, right? That's how bad it's gotten. This is a 5-story Nordstrom anchoring the biggest mall in San Francisco, and they were just like, you know what? We're not doing it anymore. But that's not the point. The point is, when you're a kid and you're growing up and you see a bum sleeping outside the train station, or if you see, whatever you see, the elements that were half as bad then as they are today. If you see that and you think it's normal, what we have on this post is a grown man who doesn't even realize that there's other things out there, or maybe he
Yeah.
does. Maybe he does, and he's just been so brainwashed from 2 decades of smoking enough weed to like kill a horse or whatever, and among other things. But there's no way that a grown man can see this and say makes sense, right? You can you can realize there's a problem and say, you know what, my life's here, my job's here. I gotta just plug, I gotta get through it. I got a kid, I got a family or whatever. But there's nothing that can convince me that no, you're wrong. This makes total sense. Just don't leave your backpack in the car, idiot. It's like
Imagine being a man and just being like, I'm just gonna deal with that.
Turn it up, Jordan.